The order came sharp and impatient. Get ready for a full search. The room fell quiet. She stood calmly in the center of the checkpoint holding area, hands relaxed at her sides, face unreadable. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale glow on concrete walls that had seen hundreds of detentions, most of them routine, none of them memorable. Her name on the temporary ID read Emily Carter, civilian contractor. No rank, no authority. At least, that was what the paperwork said. The officer in charge, Lieutenant Frank Dawson, didn't bother looking at her twice. To him, she was just another unexpected variable in a high-security zone. Someone who shouldn't have been there and now needed to be cleared. Standard procedure, Dawson said flatly. We don't skip steps. Emily nodded once. I understand. Her voice was calm. Too calm. That should have been the first warning. Point. Two female security officers stepped forward, professional, serious, following protocol to the letter. The atmosphere was controlled, procedural, not cruel, but firm. This wasn't about punishment. It was about certainty. Emily complied without resistance, in panic. No arguments. No emotional reaction. As the search proceeded, one of the officers paused. Sir, she said, hesitation creeping in her voice. Dawson looked up. What is it? There's something here. Emily exhaled slowly. They found the markings first, not decorative. Not random, clean, precise, placed with intent. Dawson stepped closer, irritation flickering into confusion. That doesn't look civilian. Emily finally spoke again. Because it isn't. The room shifted. Dawson frowned. You want to explain that? Before she could answer, the second officer's eyes widened slightly as she checked another detail, then looked back up, posture suddenly rigid. Sir, she said quietly, we need to stop. Why? Dawson snapped. Because if I'm reading this correctly, she outranks everyone in this room. Silence hit like a physical force. Dawson stared. That's not possible. Emily straightened her shoulders. It is, she said evenly. And you should secure this room immediately. Dawson's jaw tightened. Who are you? She met his eyes without arrogance, without threat. My real name is Rear Admiral Claire Monroe, she said. United States Navy. The words landed heavy. Dawson took a step back before he could stop himself. That's not funny. I'm not joking. He reached for the phone on the wall, fingers suddenly less steady. I'm calling command. Do that, Emily said, and tell them you detained Admiral Monroe during a covert readiness inspection. The line connected. 30 seconds later, Dawson's face had gone pale. Yes, sir, yes, understood. He hung up slowly. The power dynamic in the room had reversed completely. N01 spoke. Emily broke the silence. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came to see how procedures are followed when pressure is high and information is incomplete. Dawson swallowed. You were undercover? Yes. And the search? Was authorized, she said. And necessary. If protocol fails for rank, it fails completely. The officers stepped back, respectful now, shaken but composed. Emily accepted her jacket calmly, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Lieutenant Dawson, she said, your team followed procedure. That matters. He nodded stiffly. Yes, ma'am. However, she continued, your tone did not. Dawson winced. This base trains for discipline, Emily said. Discipline includes respect, especially when you believe you have control. She turned to leave, then paused. Remember this, she added. Authority isn't proven by stripping someone of dignity. It's proven by how you act when you think no one important is watching. Later that night, Dawson sat alone in his office replaying every second. Not the shock, but the lesson that he hadn't failed because he followed protocol, that he had failed because he forgot humility. Across the base, quiet messages moved through secure channels. An inspection no one knew was happening had just ended, and it hadn't ended the way anyone expected. If you're watching this story and appreciate realistic, respectful military storytelling that reveals leadership, discipline, and hard truths, make sure to subscribe to Generals and Truth Stories. The following morning, the base woke up differently and no alarms. No announcements. Just a quiet tension that moved through corridors and offices like an unspoken rumor. People knew something had happened the night before, but no one knew exactly what. Except Command. Rear Admiral Claire Monroe stood alone in the observation gallery overlooking the main training grounds. From above, she watched squads form up, boots hitting the pavement in perfect rhythm. Discipline looked good from a distance. It always did. What she cared about was what happened when things went wrong. Behind her, the door opened softly. "Ma'am," a voice said. "The incident report is finalized." She turned to see Captain Daniel Reeves, the base commander. He held a tablet, but his posture told her he already knew what it contained. "Walk with me," Claire said. They moved along the gallery, eyes forward. Lieutenant Dawson followed protocol. Reeves began carefully. But his conduct was rigid, Claire finished. Defensive and dismissive. Reeves nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Claire stopped walking and looked down at the training field again. Rank tests obedience. Uncertainty tests character. Last night wasn't about catching mistakes. It was about revealing instincts. Reeves exhaled slowly. "What happens now?" "That depends on what they learn," she said an hour later. Dawson stood outside the briefing room, palms damp despite the cool air. He had barely slept. Not because he feared punishment, but because he feared he had failed something he couldn't quite name. The door opened. "Lieutenant Dawson," Reeves said. Inside, the room was quiet. No raised voices. No threat in the air. Admiral Monroe sat at the head of the table, uniform immaculate, expression calm. "Have a seat," she said. Dawson obeyed. She didn't start with accusations. She started with questions. "Why did you assume authority required distance?" she asked. Dawson hesitated. "Because control prevents chaos, ma'am." "Control without empathy creates a different kind of chaos," she replied. "One that doesn't show up in reports." She leaned forward slightly. "Tell me honestly, if I hadn't outranked you, would you have reflected on your behavior?" Dawson swallowed. "No, ma'am." Then this inspection succeeded. There was no anger in her voice, only clarity. "You're not being removed," she continued. "You're being reassigned." Dawson's eyes widened. "Mom, you'll lead the next intake training cycle," Claire said. "But this time, you'll teach respect under pressure, not just rules." He nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am." As Dawson left, Reeves looked at Claire. "You're trusting him?" "I'm testing him," she replied. "There's a difference." That afternoon, Monroe addressed a small group of senior leaders. "No ceremony, no press, just truth. You can follow every rule and still fail the mission," she said. "Because the mission isn't just security. It's trust." No one interrupted. "People will obey your rank," she continued, "but they will only respect your character." The word stayed with them long after she left the room. That by evening, the base returned to routine. Training. Patrols. Orders given and followed. But something had shifted. Officers spoke with more care. Decisions carried more thought. Authority felt quieter, but stronger. Claire Monroe boarded a transport just before sunset. No escort. No salute requested. As the aircraft lifted, she looked out the base growing smaller below. Another test completed. Another truth revealed. Leadership wasn't about power. It was about restraint. If this story resonated with you, if you value realistic military storytelling that focuses on integrity, accountability, and leadership under pressure, make sure to subscribe to Generals and Truth Stories, because the strongest missions are often the ones no one knows happened, and the most powerful leaders are the ones who don't need to be recognized to make a difference.